One of the things we like to talk about is long-range business planning. And to give a little bit of background here, I want to have a story. So I was working with this client, and we were talking a little bit about whether they wanted to sell the business. And they had some potential buyers, and we were going to do a valuation, and all these things were kind of coming together. But they never really sort of settled into what they wanted to do. They started to kind of waffle, and they weren't sure they wanted to sell. They weren't sure they wanted to have someone succeed into the ownership role from within. They weren't sure really what they wanted to do. And we spent about 6 months working together, and they finally decided they wanted to sort of go their own way. And it was a little bit disappointing for us because what we were seeing was the owner never really decided whether or not he wanted to sell the business or whether or not he wanted to have it go internally, whether they wanted to work through a broker, whether they wanted to get a valuation so they could potentially get paid more money and have sort of a national reach, all these things. Now here's the kicker. The owner was in his late 70s. Now this tells an interesting story because sometimes in business there's this feeling, and sometimes in all walks of life, there's this feeling that life is so daily. That's the way I like to call it. I heard it once and I love that. I forget who said it, but there's this feeling that we're sort of still in the rut we always were in, and we just sort of report daily and go through the motions, wrap up the day, and then rinse and repeat. It's kind of a disappointing process. And so what I encourage clients to do is to do their best at least once a year to step back, really think about the long-term vision of this organization, and think about where they want it to end up. Do you want this to continuously be a lifestyle business? And then eventually, do you want it to be sold? Or do you want to sell as soon as possible? You will at some point exit your business one way or another. There's no way around that. So you got to think about what do you want that to look like? Do you want a buyer to help you cash in and have the value be as significant as possible? Do you want to have a succession plan within your organization where you sell it to someone that you've had maybe the opportunity to groom for that role 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 10 or 20 years perhaps? Or do you want to do something else with it, maybe that I didn't mention? All these things could come into play, and you could do a lot of different things with your business. But what's interesting that we find is if you don't keep the end in mind, you lose so many opportunities as you go to make sure that you can accomplish that aim and accomplish it the way you want to. Most people eventually sell their business some way or another, either through the estate actually selling it, the spouse or beneficiary selling it after someone passed, or intentionally selling it before they pass, or beforehand they sell it as a distinct process of the business itself, as in a startup, building the business, growing it up, selling it to someone else. But if they don't have this target in mind, they lose all these opportunities along the way to have the business get the best outcome for them and for themselves when they eventually do depart one way or another. So keep the end in mind, keep in mind where you want to go with that business long term, and then try to translate that back to where each day you're doing something very specific, even if it's small, even if it's 5 minutes, you're doing something that you can say, this relates to this final end of this business. This relates to that final objective and that final goalpost for us. Hope that helps. Try to avoid the feeling that life is so daily. Think big, think about the big picture, and try to keep that in mind as you go through your work so that you can maximize what the business is doing for you and for your future. Thanks for watching.